Hi everybody, welcome back to our series on ChemSketch. I'm Jesse, part of the marketing department here at ACDLabs. I'm very excited to share with you today a little tutorial about the tutorial. In ChemSketch, a lot of people don't know the fact that there's actually a little tutorial section that you can find within the program, and I think that has a lot of useful lessons there. So I'm going to show you how to access that and then actually work through some of the exercises within one of the early lessons there, and you can follow along with me, or you can follow along and do the instructions by yourself. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said, so let's get sketching. Okay, so to begin with, we are going to go into the Help menu and then Access Documents, and there's going to be two tutorial little toggles here. And the second one opens up a PDF document that does have some useful information in it, particularly about the IUPAC and stereochemistry, but we don't need to worry about that for right now. We're actually going to be focusing on the other one. So this is the decoy one. The real tutorial is here, the one labeled with the T that's underlined. So open this one up and you're going to get a window that looks kind of like this. This has a bunch of different chapters for it. We're going to be skipping the first one because it's just not as much going on here that's interesting. And I'm going to be working through the second one today. So this is what we're going through, but of course all of these other ones have lots of interesting lessons that are also relevant for getting more out of ChemSketch. Now I'm going to move this out of the way, obviously, for us as we're working through it, but you can open this up and go through if you follow along if you'd like. To begin with, we're going to start with the draw normal function. We have the carbon selected, we have draw normal selected. We're just going to place a carbon right in the middle of our sheet. This obviously creates a methane for us. We can then add a extra carbon on this by just clicking on it. So that gives us, of course, an ethane. And then we can click again to add another carbon bond off of that so that we have a propane. So we can add another carbon to this just like clicking again. So we have a 2-methyl propane right here. So that's what we have. And we can also then change the alignment with some little buttons here. So set bond vertically is one that we're going to be using a couple times through the course of this tutorial. So we click this right here and our alignment has been fixed, essentially, that it's that one that we selected is at the bottom. We can also select it so that they go up to the top, but if you click it again, it goes to the bottom. So it kind of just chooses one or the other, and flips it around to whatever's possible. We're not going to see it in this one, but you can just, for our purposes, you can also set a horizontal, works the exact same way, but we're going to go back to our vertical arrangement like this. This is the structure that we're going to need for some of our upcoming bits of the tutorial. Next, we are going to do the double bond. So we once again need to have the normal function. You actually don't need the normal one specifically, but the other ones work as well. But this allows us to do the double bond. Here you see that the hydrogen has been removed, so it's intelligent in calculating that. This has also been changed to a CH group as it used to be a CH2 group. And we can click again to have the triple bond. So of course, the software knows that that's going to be a CH. Now, to undo actions, you can, of course, click Control-Z to undo things, which is a pretty normal shortcut that exists in a lot of different programs. But you can also click a button here, this one right here, Undo Change Bond, and that's another way to undo. So if for whatever reason you don't like the Control-Z way of doing things, that's one way that you can do it. You can also redo changes. You can also have access to them in this little panel here if you're interested in that, but just different ways that you can undo and redo things if that's what you're interested in doing. Now, for deleting individual atoms, there's actually a couple of different ways to do this. We're going to click right now the delete button here, and we're going to delete this one right here, this atom. And you see that both of these atoms have actually been removed. The software assumes that you want to remove both of them. But you actually don't need to do things that way. So I just undid that deletion. Right now I'm going to go click, Control-click delete. And I'm instructing the program that I only want to delete that particular atom, and that this atom here is assumed to want to keep that one around. So that's one thing that you can do. Of course, it's possible to do deleting things by highlighting a particular atom and clicking delete on your keyboard. But that also has the downside that if I click delete here, I'm going to hold Control press delete, still deletes both of them. So if that's something that matters to you for whatever reason, you can, of course, do it with this. But now if the chain is longer, so let's just add an extra one on here, go to delete, click this button, we don't get that same, automatic deletion. Let's talking about changing individual atoms right now. You can have access to any atom that you like in the periodic table button here. So that's found up here in the top left corner, periodic table of elements. Open this up and we get a nice big panel. Choose anything that you want. Obviously, for most organic chemists, you're going to be using, a lot of carbons, oxygens, nitrogens, and hydrogens, and maybe a little bit of other things here and there, but that's why they're based in this row here that you see them predominantly, but you do have the ability to customize what the rest of this bank here is, and that this is determined by what I've used most recently. But for this one, we want to use fluorine. For this exercise, I'm going to click right here and I'm going to get a fluorine in that position. Now, you had thought maybe that this would have added a fluorine off of the methyl, and that maybe that's what you wanted in this particular case. But we'll see that later on. There's different ways to do that in the different drawing modes. But in this particular situation where you're using the normal draw function, if you just take the atom and then click on a group like that, it's just going to substitute it. But let's look at the other alternative here. So this is the draw continuous function. I'm going to first click here on this atom that's at the end, and then I'm going to click again, and we get our fluorine to pop off, and another fluorine popping off here. So this is a way that if you wanted to build the fluorines off of the chain, as opposed to having, changing the atoms with a fluorine. So something to be aware of depending on what it is that you want. Now let's talk about making bonds internal to a structure. You're not just required to create bonds between like new atoms. You can do it between existing atoms. So right now we're going to use the draw normal function, and we're going to drag a bond across here between these two. And you actually see that I have the fluorine connected, selected right now, and that didn't cause any problems. It still understands that I'm trying to get that bond between these two atoms here. So, but you just have to drag it across, because if you just were to press the button, you'd still get that fluorine there, which is obviously not correct. Now with the draw continuous function, we click on the one and then we click on the other, which is a little bit easier to do because you don't have to drag it across. And particularly if you're doing something that's even more complicated, then holding that down can be a bit of a nuisance. So that's a useful tool to have access to, depending on what it is that you're drawing. Of course, though, this isn't the prettiest structure in the universe, so we are going to clean it up with the Clean Structure button. This is one that I showed in a previous video, but works perfectly here in order to give us that nice, clean-looking ring, so much more attractive here, much easier to understand. It's not just about, it's not just about looking good. It's about being clear. I appreciate both the clarity and then the good presentation. Professional presentation. So, and then we can also assign our fluorine group to be at the top here with our set bond vertical button that I showed earlier. So just click that here and on previously, and then it switched up. Now we're going to look at something that's a little bit more advanced and powerful, and it's the edit atom label. This is actually quite a flexible tool. We are taking this, we're clicking on this fluorine, and this opens up this dialog box, and this allows us to attach any group that we want, like organic chemistry groups, to this position that we selected. And this even uses some terminology that are kind of specialized to organic chemists. So like, for instance, CBZ, it doesn't mean anything to an average chemist or like a student, but it has a particular group meaning in organic chemistry. But we're going to be looking at the CH2-3 pH, so that's for the phenyl ring. So we're going to click that, click insert, and we get that here. Now this is something that we can also change the arrangement of this, of whether it's going to be pointing this way, or we can change it to point the other way with the change position button. So do this and it flips. So that's something depending on how your molecule is laid out, one or the other might look better. I'm going to undo that. And then we can actually expand this though. We're going to go back into the edit atom label, click here, and then I'm going to click expand. So now we get the full chain, the propyl group and the benzene ring that's off here. So depending, once again, whether you want that compact form to, you know, draw attention to other parts of the molecule, or you want that, you know, expanded part to see the details of this, either one you have access to with that insert versus expand tool. Now we're going to do some arrangement work that's a little bit more advanced. We're going to switch to the lasso tool, and we're going to lasso this chunk of the molecule here. So all of these atoms here. And we're going to now go back to our set bond vertical button and click right here. So now this section of the molecule has been shifted to hit this bond being vertical. Now, obviously this looks a little bit wonky in this particular spot here, but if this is what you wanted to do, if you wanted to set things up to emphasize one particular part of the molecule, that's one way that you can do it. You can also then go back to this tool, select move tool, and move this down. And you can see that it also has kind of a structured, you know, it's not just totally freely moving. It gives you a little bit of a sense of where it's supposed to land, so that this is an even placement here. So that's kind of useful to do in order to get things to look proper. Next, we're just going to quickly review drawing chains. So this is one that I've shown before in a previous video, but it's worth reviewing. So the draw change buttons is right up here. Draw this out. This is just arbitrarily large. We don't need to be careful with that. So that's how that works. You can draw it off of a pre-existing structure. And you can also, once again, use this to draw heteroatom. So click, click, click here. So we get our fluorines sprouting out at the end. So that's another way that you can add it, depending on what your preferences are in the particular position that your molecule is in and what you want to add. Okay, so I just made some little structures down here. We're going to move on to something that's a little bit different than playing with this beautiful structure, as beautiful as it is, but we're going to move on to doing some work with charges and radicals. So I'm going to click this button right here. So this is the increment charge button, and you can add this to a atom and it will charge it appropriately. So so now this is considered a positive charge, but you also see that the extra hydrogen has been added on here. So the software has figured out that it should have an extra proton added onto it. You can also change this to a negative here. So we're going to remove that hydrogen by adding a negative charge here. Obviously not a particularly stable species, but you know, anything's possible in a drawing software. One of the beauties of it. Now we can also change to the radical function. So that's what this one is here. We add this on here. Once again, we have removed our hydrogen, and so we have our radical species that's now displayed in this way. Once we're in the radical mode though, you can go back into the menu to change to a positive or negative radical, but you can also use the right click button on your mouse. So that's what I'm doing right here. Change this to the right click, go to the positive radical here. This is not displaying perfectly because of this other atom in the way. I'll just move that out of the way. But let's go back to this one. Negative anion, negative radical rather, and then we have that. So different ways that you can accomplish the drawing radicals, and so that little tool is here in the bottom left corner to change that. In order to show biradicals, you can actually do that through, first we're going to delete one of these on the carbons on here. We're going to go back to our radical tool and add on our second radical here. So now we have our biradical formation, obviously not a particularly stable molecule, but you can display that. Something that's not going to be covered in this particular tutorial is about the charges associated with metals. The software knows what charges metals are most likely to achieve, so it'll find those when you're increasing or decreasing the charge. If people want to learn more about that, let me know in the comments, and I'll make a separate video maybe about organometallic compounds in ChemSketch. Then the last thing that we're going to cover in this particular one is about how to clear out the whole screen, so we can do things such as the edit select all, and then we can go to the delete tool and we can click anywhere and everything will be deleted. So that's one thing that you want to do if you want to start off with a blank sheet. If you really aren't happy with how your work is going, of course, you can just start a new sheet through things like, file new here, or you can have a new document button here, or the new page. I've covered the pages in the first video in this series. But if you want to start off with a clean slate and you're unhappy with the work that you've done so far, this is one way to do it. That covers everything that I wanted to show today. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, be sure to leave your comments and let me know what you want to covered in this series in the future. I'd love to take your suggestions and get ideas from you. Also, of course, you can follow the channel or follow our other social media accounts and get more information about what ACDLabs is up to. But thank you so much for sticking around, and happy sketching, folks.